Thank you, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity. As indicated by Tom, my name is Yanko Banda. I am a registered professional engineer, and I'm the current chairperson for the Education and Training Committee who've organized this event this evening. So by way maybe of giving some context or background into what is the Education and Training Committee. So the Education and Training Committee is basically a committee that was initiated way back in 1999. And what drove the need for this committee to be initiated is that a number of professionals in the space realized that it was pertinent that continuous professional development relevant for engineers or the industry needed to be, put out there just to make sure that as professionals in the space, we're keeping up with industry norms and we are in alignment with the CETA regulations. So as the ENT committee, like I mentioned, it's been in existence for quite a long time. Our key mandate is to provide engineering interest or to meet the needs or the engineering interest and needs is to ensure an institutional structure that supports the needs of its members, the members being the civil engineers registered to the association, as well as to promote education and inclusive development. So basically, we as the committee are here to assist professionals in the civil engineering space to develop knowledge as well as to present engineering best practices out there and to ensure that as professionals in the profession, we are kept abreast with new advancements in the industry, thus ensuring that we maintain a high standard of work that we put out there as practicing professionals in this space. And it's just to make sure that, like I mentioned earlier, we remain abreast of current trends and developments. I mean, if you look at how the world is developing, when COVID hit, none of us actually thought that we'd have to change the way we do things, because of such changes, there's a lot that is happening. And with that also happening, codes, etc., needs to happen. So I'll go into some of the offerings that we are offering, or is going to be, or a session that will be offered most recently. So as I mentioned, as the committee, we do offer a wide range of courses. So the courses range. Some of them are face-to-face, some of them are online, some of them are self-paced, some of them we can do them in-house on request or on demand. And if you'd like more information in terms of service offerings, and like Tom said, some of the courses can also be tailor-made for specific industry or for a specific company, but that is also dependent on the numbers or the demand or the interest being there. If you'd like to find out more information in terms of the service offerings that we offer as the SAICI Education and Training Committee, you can go to the website, which is www.saici.org.za, and under the SAICI Academy tab, you will then get to see the various courses that we are going to be offering. Now, as mentioned, one of our priorities as the Education and Training Committee is CPD courses for our members. And in line with that, I would really like to encourage members in the meeting or the webinar this evening, whether you be an engineer or an employer or an employer's agent or a project manager, construction manager, a site agent, a foreman, a student working in the construction industry. I'd like to encourage you to attend the GCC 2025 conversion course, which will be happening on the 18th of September, my apologies. So this is a full day course, and it is CPD accredited. As an organization, we are working very closely with EXA, so we do offer, or we can give CPD points, and this will be EXA and SACPMP accredited. And the course is to attend the course, it is worth 4,750. This is VAT inclusive for SAICI members, and 5,850 VAT inclusive for non-SAICI members. And this fee gets you a copy of the GCC 2025 book, which is valued at 1,250. This will be couriered to you before the course. And what this course aims to do is that if you've been or you work in the construction space or are aware of the codes, you'll know that the GCC is one of the guiding documents that we use as engineers, especially in the construction sector. And it was last updated in 2015. So like I mentioned, none of us saw the changes that happened when COVID happened. And even before then, there's a lot that has changed from 2015 to now. So it was very pertinent for certain things to accommodate the way the industry is moving, or the way the world is moving. Hence now the GCC 2025 conversion, or the approval and the endorsement of the code. And this is just to ensure that we are in alignment with the CIDB regulations. And what this code basically, or what the training session or the workshop will do, is that it will highlight key changes. So there's about 129 key changes and improvements that have been incorporated or made to the 2025 code. And you'll basically be taken through what changes have been made, why the changes were made, and how it'll benefit you. It'll just bring you or keep you up to date with what is happening in the industry. So I'd really, really encourage each and every one of us, especially those who work with the GCC or have worked with the GCC, whether it's on a full-time basis or an ad hoc basis, or you need a refresher, I would really encourage each and every one of us to attend this course. It's on the 18th of September. For more information, you can go to the SAICI website. Emails are getting circulated. If you're not part of our database, you can email some of the members. I believe Tom can make that information available to us, whether it's in the chats or there's a specific SAICI email address. I believe Tom will make that available. So yeah, that's just us in a nutshell. If there's any questions, you're free to reach out to myself or Tom or anyone else at SAICI. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Janco, for that historical overview of the ENT panel. I hate to say it, but I've been involved in that panel almost from when it was established, which shows my age. But anyway, let's not go there. Okay, so let's get into tonight's topic. Let me just get my correct slideshow up. As you can see on the screen, can I confirm, Shirley, that you can see the screen?
Yes, we can see the screen. Thank you.
Okay, so the topic of tonight's session is, why should you develop soft skills as an engineering professional to succeed in your career? Now, you will know, those of you who are still studying, or those of you who have studied, and even if you studied a long time ago, you will recall that your career in terms of an academic career was very much maths and science and physics and related engineering application of those sciences based. So you do a lot of technical stuff when you are studying for your qualification. You then graduate and you get let loose out into the wide world. And all of a sudden you have to deal with circumstances that you may not necessarily have been ready for or prepared for. What we have done is we have looked at what are the different components and or aspects that we would classify as soft skills, and many of my peers who have contributed content have all said, but we're calling it the wrong thing. Maybe we should actually call it hard skills, because sometimes these soft skills are very, very difficult to master, take a lot of commitment and a lot of time for you to become competent at those skills. What we're going to do tonight is we're going to do 3 things with you. We're going to firstly go through at a high level why these soft skills we believe are critical to your career and what those skills are, with some examples and obviously some content. Then I'm going to take you on a little bit of a journey onto the website to show you how you can access not only our soft skills courses, which are now live and available. There's 4 of them loaded already, and we'll be loading 2 or 3 every week over the next few months, but also how you can go and access resources that are free to SAICI members, like the registration guideline series. And also recently we've added the webinars on demand. I'll show you how those work, how you register an account, because lots of people think their SAICI membership portal information is how they access it. And then what we thought we would do for tonight, given that this was a last minute thing, is we will take you through one of the soft skills lessons. As it's going to appear, obviously you will be doing it live. The soft skills courses that are on our website are all user driven. The benefit of on-demand courses or self-paced learning courses is A, they are considerably cheaper than any other form of CPD for those that have to get CPD. B, you can do them in your own time and at your own pace. The information is available to you in perpetuity once you have registered for a course. So if you want a refresher in a year or 2 years or 3 years' time, it will still be there under your My Courses button. And it does all the paperwork in the background for you on completion of a very simple multiple choice question assessment, 5 questions of which you must get 4 right. You will then receive a CPD certificate. So you can accumulate your required CPD points. For those in the audience that are registered and know that you have to get them over time, and or if you're in the last minute to re-register and you suddenly discover in category 1 I'm short by 0.3 or 0.5 or however many points, it is a way through one of these platforms. You don't have to go and look for when is a course available that I can attend. It may be inconvenient to you, it may be costly to you, and obviously loss of productive time is an expense to your company or employer. We've got this platform for you now where you can go and you can get the training and the CPD points either in the evening or over the weekend or early in the morning or whenever it is convenient to you. The second thing, as I said, I'm going to do is we're going to introduce you to our Mastering Soft Skills as an Engineering Professional series. If you were in from the beginning when we were playing the holding slide deck, you would have seen some of the topics. And if you want to do one of these courses, you just need to look out for that logo you can see on the left-hand side, kindly designed by Naledi in our PR and marketing department. And you can see it shows you that you don't only have to be able to write technical stuff, but we hope that the light globe will switch on a frequent basis when it comes to being confronted with some of the challenges that you may or may not occur in the workplace. So let's dive straight into it. The question we always ask, obviously, is, why soft skills? So just to quote somebody, your greatest skill isn't on your resume or CV, as it's called locally. It's how you show up every day. In other words, what do you bring to the organization that you work for? And it doesn't matter whether you work for yourself, whether you work for somebody else, whether you work in the state-owned entity, the public sector. It's you that is delivering an end product. Service to mankind is what civil engineers or built environment professionals do. And that means that you have to show up. You should be the person who makes things easier, not harder. That's the critical aspect. Are you adding value through your attitude, your demeanor, your ability, not only technical, but in terms of your soft skills abilities? Or are you making things a lot more difficult because you yourself are a difficult person and you are unable to handle difficult situations? We will unpack some of those for you in a short while. And that is a statement made by Eric Partaker. Okay, so as we do with all of our online on-demand courses, for those of you who visited them, we always start with this cover of Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. If you don't have the book, if you haven't read the book, please do. A very, very good read. Simon Sinek is also quite popular on LinkedIn and on TED Talks and other sectors where you can get access to his stuff. Just Google Simon Sinek and you'll get very, very good leadership and or business skills. But what Simon Sinek basically says is before you do anything, you should always ask yourself the question, why? Why am I doing it? Why should I do it? And why should I do it now? If you take the book talks about, why does Apple produce laptops and or cell phones or whatever they produce? What makes them so special in doing it, albeit costly? Why does Nike produce what Nike does, and so on and so on and so on? And the basic message is people don't meddle in areas that they are not supposed to meddle in. So we are engineers or practitioners in the engineering space. That is our core business, but we are suggesting that in addition to your technical prowess, you also need to have some soft skills that you can add to it. And let me just go through a few of those that we think are critical. So we've already said we think it's essential for your career. Here are some of the key reasons why we say this. First of all, engineers need to clarify, articulate complex technical information to diverse audiences, which could include colleagues, clients, and stakeholders. who may not have a technical background. So you will know you've got to deal with difficult clients who don't understand the technical aspect of what you are trying to explain, but you've got to be able to explain it in a manner where they don't undermine the technical requirement of the project. This includes written communication by means of technical reports and or even emails, and obviously verbal communication in terms of making a presentation on a project or to a client, either as a progress report or in order to get the client's consensus on the project, or even managing and running meetings. So effective communication, very, very critical to be a successful professional. The second aspect is looking at teamwork and collaboration. Engineering projects are really solitary endeavors. In other words, it's not just you and you alone. You may be dealing with multidisciplinary teams, members. You could have electricals, mechanicals. If it's a wastewater treatment works, you could have chemical engineers, industrial engineers. You may have a contractor, the client. You may have an operator, and so on and so on and so on. So they have to be done in a collaborative manner. And our current president going around the country, I think he's in East London today at the Amatoli branch, he is a great proponent of you need to be able to collaborate in everything that you do. Doing something on your own is not as much fun. You should go and run the comrades and feel the pain all on your own, despite the support you get along the way. Our environment requires good collaboration. So strong soft skills will facilitate much smoother teamwork, assist you with conflict resolution, and help you to gather a shared understanding of the requirements of the project or of the situation in which you find yourself. While technical skills are vital for problem solving, soft skills like critical thinking, adaptability, and creativity enable engineers to approach challenges from very different angles. They allow you to innovate and to find effective solutions. And that's critical in the modern world where you've got to keep your costs to a limit and still produce high quality output work. As engineers progress in your careers, and there are many of you in the audience today, I saw from the registration, that are already in a much more senior position, perhaps than you were 5 years or 10 years ago, you will understand that the nature of your role in the profession now is very, very different from how it was when you started out either as a new graduate or when you'd progressed 2 or 3 years into your career. You must obviously ensure that you've got soft skills like leadership, negotiation, and persuasion, because they are critical for you to motivate your team. When you're guiding projects and influencing decisions, being a good leader and being able to influence people is quite a critical skill to have. Engineers frequently interact with their clients and other stakeholders. Again, Friedrich often tells people we build stuff, but we often don't take into account when we're building or designing the stuff, who are the people that are going to be impacted on by that stuff. We want a nice new high-speed road from A to B, but that road's going to go across property which could sever communities, could have a negative impact on the people who live along the route of the new road. Yes, it achieves the transportation engineer's objective, but it does not necessarily be to the benefit of the stakeholders. So have you consulted with everybody to check to see that what you are trying to achieve from an engineering perspective is actually what the community also wants? If you can build rapport and understanding what their needs are, and manage their expectations, then that will allow you to actually achieve a lot more on the project than were you to ignore those factors. The engineering landscape is changing constantly. I'm sure you're all familiar with that. We now have AI to deal with. I always tell the story when I was a young engineer, we used to do all our calculations by hand. We even did the drawings by hand. Imagine if I walked into one of your offices, took away your computer, took away your software, took away all the tools that you currently have to do the job and said, please give me the same end result. You probably would go and seek an alternative career because you've got so many toys that you can play with and tools that are at your disposal. The unfortunate part is we sometimes rely too heavily on those without understanding what it is that we are doing. So make sure you are constantly developing new skills, and those include developing soft skills in order that you should be better equipped by means of continuous learning. And I think that was the message that Janco was trying to give you. Of course, it's an extra requirement, outcome 8, in terms of ethics. But besides that, just being ethical in the way in which you go about your business, be you a student or a practitioner, is highly important. Soft skills encompass both professionalism, ethical conduct, and a strong work ethic, which are fundamental for building trust and maintaining a positive reputation in the industry. And then very important for your career advancement, you need to look beyond technical proficiency. As I said when I was doing the introduction, having a qualification, and if it's a qualification with lots of distinctions in, great, but that only gets you into the door. That's not going to actually make you sustain and be a sought after commodity within the profession. It's how you develop your soft skills and other things related to the soft skills that will differentiate a top performer from those that are just doing the job. You need to be doing more than just doing the job. So that is our reasons for why we think you need these skills. But let's start to look at in a bit more detail, what are those skills? So I'm going to try and give you some practical guidance. Hopefully you're all ambitious professionals and that you will be looking to advance as far as you possibly can within what is now a very competitive environment where there is a high rate of unemployment. I'll go one step further and say that these soft skills will give you a lot more possibility for mobility as a professional. Don't look at you live in a particular region or city or town. That's where you're looking for a job. Look beyond that. Look beyond our borders. The whole world is actually your oyster. There is always a skills demand for professionals, particularly with our skill set around the world. Go to where the work is and get your benefits from doing that work wherever they may be in the world. So this is the things I hope you will learn by the end of today's session. Why soft skills matter, more in fact than technical skills for career advancement. Remember I said your degree, diploma, whatever it is that you've got will open up the door for you to get employed, but the way you approach employment and your attitude is often a criteria that is not on a job specification, but employers will be looking for. How do you handle yourself at the interview? What is your frame of mind? What is your attitude to the circumstances which you find? We're going to go through 10 of those soft skills this evening, and I hope that you will at least pick some of them, if not all of them, and start developing your own skills that I'm going to raise this evening immediately. We will show you specific techniques to master each skill within your daily work. What can you do to be better, even if it's small fraction better each day, because a little bit of improvement will result in a big improvement over time. As long as you're constantly striving to improve, you will be a better person and a better professional in the future. When that future is will be very much dependent on how committed each of you are to the process that we are proposing. And then how do you measure your progress and demonstrate these skills to others? You must tell people, I'm going to be working on this, and this is what I'm hoping to achieve. And if it's, for simple example, your speaking ability, I'm going to put myself in an awkward situation. Any of you read Innocentia Mahlangu's book? She talks about when she was a young engineer, just graduated from WITS. She used to almost hide in the corner so nobody could see her and let everybody else in the room speak until she took herself out of that comfort zone and she put herself where she had an opinion and she learned to express it. It's not easy for people who are shy or are not easily able to articulate themselves. But that's the very stuff that you must put yourself in order to get better. By the end of the webinar, we hope that you'll have actionable roadmap to develop your interpersonal abilities, and that will truly drive your career to success. We want nothing more for you to be successful in your career, whether it is in a local authority, a state-owned entity, a consulting, contracting practice, or even eventually running your own business, whatever that may be, wherever it may be in the world. And we hope that you will also be able to identify certain critical pillars of what you want your future self to look like. Only you can determine what that will be. So let's start off with a couple of hard truths. Soft skills are not easy. I made that very clear right from the beginning. They're not necessarily things that come naturally to everyone. That means you've got to work hard at them. So your technical expertise and or your base qualification may get you in the door, but it's your soft skills that will determine how far you go. So there we've got the ladder of success. It's an AI-generated image, I must say. Where you progress to up that ladder, and hopefully you don't step on other people on the way up, is very much dependent on how quickly and how well you adapt to the environment, and how quickly and how well you start to be able to demonstrate some of the soft skills that we are going to run through this evening. A survey was conducted a few months ago, and it found that 93% of employers consider soft skills equally or more important than your technical skills. Now, I'm sorry to burst your bubble when you're thinking, wow, I'm going to graduate with a degree or a diploma or whatever from institution A, B, or C, and now I'm coming along and telling you that's not worth anything. It's your soft skill. I'm not saying that. I'm simply saying you can't rely only on the qualification. It's what you do after the qualification that is quite critical. There is some good news, however. Unlike technical skills that become outdated, so when you were a student, you may have done X, Y, and Z, and you get into industry and they tell you, no, but X, Y, and Z isn't what we do anymore. We now do A, B, and C. And you've got to relearn the set of technical skills because often universities have lecturers, and I was one for a long time, so I'm speaking from experience, who teach what they were taught. They're not necessarily up to date with the modern trends, modern processes, modern procedures. And I'm not saying they're all like that. There are many that do stay up to date, but then they teach you what they know rather than what you need to know to be successful in the workplace. But soft skills will increase your value throughout your career. You will never, ever, ever be regrettable about the fact that you've gained a new soft skill, whatever that may be. So let's start with the first skill. The first skill is to take initiative. What do we mean by taking initiative? That is, don't wait to be told what to do. Don't wait for somebody to give you instructions or to request you to do something. Use your own initiative and take steps to get stuff done. So when your boss or supervisor comes to you to say, okay, how are you going? You can not only have completed the task that you were given what to do, but you've gone 3, 4, 5, 6 steps further. I hope you don't mind, but in addition to doing X, I've also looked at whatever else you've looked at. So take the initiative, make things happen. That's critical. How do we do that? You develop what we call an ownership mindset. See problems as opportunities, not as threats or as problems. They are opportunities for you to say, if I were the owner of this business, what would I do? Then do it without being asked, because if you are adding value to the project and or to the business, you will become a very, very valuable asset, even if that value does not necessarily improve your salary or your dividends or your bonus or whatever it is immediately, but you will become an asset. And being an asset to an organization is highly recommended. You should provide what we call preemptive updates. In other words, don't make the manager ask you for information. Share. And I'll show you something a little bit later in the evening, the kind of way that you can share what you've done, how you've done it, and what you still need to do, and what assistance you require. Make sure you proactively share with your manager or supervisor or colleagues what you have done before they ask you what you have done. Just pop them a little email or leave a note in a sticky pad or whatever is your chosen way of communication that they can see things are happening and things are on progress. The more senior you become, the less time you've got to be checking on other people. Managers and leaders make the assumption that once they've given an instruction or agreed on who's going to do what, the people will do it. It's bad news for the organization when they discover it hasn't been done. So being proactive, and I'm not suggesting you write them a thesis, a very brief feedback is optimal. Always make sure you get to the next step. In other words, don't just say, here's the problem, bring a solution. I used to work with colleagues where I would tell them, don't bring me a problem unless you're going to bring me at least 2 or 3 solutions. I may not choose one of your 3, but I want to know I have options that you've already considered. So never just identify a problem, come with a solution or more than one solution and how you plan to resolve the problem. That's what team members do. That's taking initiative. I'm going to challenge you to ask yourself, looking back for the month of August, how many times this month have you solved a problem that you were not asked to solve? You can put it in the chat if you like, so that Janko and Shirley can have a look, and Shirley, I'm obviously not seeing the chat, but just ask yourself, if the answer is 0, then you're not being very effective in the environment in which you're working, and I include being a student. Let's discuss what we call the 500 Rand rule, and you can make that any value. You can make it a 50 Rand rule, a 500 Rand rule, a 5,000 Rand rule, or a 50,000 Rand rule, depending where you are in your life. Companies do this. What they do, they say, is that if solving a problem would cost less than your value in time or resources, you don't need to ask permission, just fix it. There's another saying in business that says we don't ask permission. It's much quicker to ask forgiveness. But be careful, because you've got to take responsibility for the consequences of your action. What we are saying is many people become almost inactive while they wait for somebody else to make the decision for them. Is the decision you're going to make going to cost a lot of money? If the answer is no, and you're going to set the value as what is a lot of money, then you must get on and make it. If you work in an environment that's building you and encouraging you, your manager will even accept if you make a poor decision as part of the learning process, because it's not going to have a dire or serious consequences on the business. Having this kind of approach, if you are a leader with your staff and your team, empowers employees to take action without implementing a bureaucratic thou shalt ask before thou may do mentality. It builds a culture of initiative. The more initiative people can show, the more productive that team or that organization will become. What 500 Rand or 50 Rand or 5 Rand or whatever value you've placed on it, problems are you going to be able to solve next week? That's my question. Without being asked to solve the problem, you know immediately, I can go and solve that problem, and you will do so without being asked. Let's look at the second skill, reading body language. You know, some people, their facial expression just tells you that there's something wrong. The frown or the lips pout or whatever they do. You must be able to read body language, to see there are signals being given to you without words being expressed. Eyes, hands, and even the feet sometimes are more indicative of what somebody is thinking or feeling than any words that they can state. In South Africa, which has got a very diverse workplace, lots of different backgrounds people come from, being attentive to non-verbal cues can help you to navigate complex cultural interactions and build stronger relationships. And I'm sure all of you will already be thinking, now I remember in an environment, because there are some cultural differences that if you don't understand the other culture or the other person's history and background, it's very difficult to get them to think the way that you think. Rather than making them think your way, try and embrace the way that they think and find some common ground. Make eye contact appropriately. From a South African business perspective, having direct eye contact shows that you are a confident person. But be aware also that in some cultures, looking at somebody indifferently is deemed as being you are either challenging authority or you are almost bordering on being a pervert. Make sure that you use eye contact appropriately, but don't not make eye contact. That's very critical from a business perspective. Watch the behavior of people within a meeting. Even if you are not talking, you are part of a meeting that's taking place, but you are requiring the client or a difficult contractor or somebody to get something fixed and resolved. Watch to see, who is actually engaged in the conversation. If somebody's sitting there scrolling through their phone, checking their messages, then they're not even listening, they're not even engaging. If it's serious enough, you may even have to say, listen, please, all cell phones must be put away because they are a distraction. Cues of how the people are engaging will show you who do you need to perhaps convince a little bit more, because they, you often get people, they're already shaking their head and you haven't even finished your pitch yet. And the head is not shaking in an up and down yes direction, it's shaking in a left, right, no direction, which is not in the interest of your project. Just an aside, if you are standing somewhere, people's feet often can reveal their true intentions. They point towards what interests people or away from what doesn't. So if you're trying to show somebody something and their body language is where they incline themselves away from what you're trying to show them, then you already know you've lost that person. They're no longer engaged in what it is you are trying to show them. And imagine on a site where you often are having to show somebody something to get something done or to rectify a problem, but they are disinterested in the issue. Let's just look quickly at some body languages across South African cultures. So in an urban professional setting, one expects to have a firm handshake. When you meet somebody or greet somebody, you don't want to grab the tail of a fish, or somebody who doesn't engage. You want them to firmly engage, but you also don't want them to crush your hand or you to crush their hand. So a firm handshake is generally expected within a business urban environment. Maintaining your professional distance, your safe space. Most people say it's about a 1 meter radius. Some people like a little bit more, but make sure you maintain a professional distance whilst you are engaging with somebody. We've already mentioned ensuring there is direct eye contact, because that is valued. In a traditional context, more personal space may be preferred. Certain individuals and or personalities or there are certain customs where a little bit more space is warranted. Be aware of that so that you don't make somebody feel uncomfortable. Less direct eye contact with elders in particular, that's a sign of respect. That does not mean when you greet, you don't make eye contact, but then you don't stare at them in case they start to think maybe there's something that looks funny about them, which is why you're constantly staring. Much greater emphasis is on respectful posture. And often you'll find when some people's culture, they greet you, that firm handshake is with two hands out of respect for the person that you are greeting. So nobody's saying change that. Just be mindful of why somebody is doing that. If you are the recipient of somebody shaking your hand with both their hands, they are giving you due reverence and showing respect to you. From a cross-cultural meeting perspective, watch for head nodding. It may indicate listening, but not agreement. Yes, they're listening to you, but that doesn't mean they're agreeing with what you are saying. Silence may also not mean that they are ignoring you. It may mean they are giving thoughtful consideration to what it is that you have just said. So all of those gestures and or body languages, depending on the circumstances in which they come across, are critical. And again, hand gestures mean different things. So if you go drive down the road and somebody's waving their hand, it means they're looking for a lift to the beach or to the coast and so on. Those that hitchhike or use combi taxis will know very well what hand signal indicates what intent. Understanding subtle differences can also help you navigate South Africa's diverse workplace. And I think we've all experienced that we're working in an environment that we don't always quite fully understand, and having much more sensitivity will result in us being far more effective. The third skill, and this is critical skill, make sure that you master the ability to be clear and brevity. That is, to be brief. Long-winded emails or explanations, nobody has time for that. People are very, very busy, especially bosses. As I explained to you, with a 60, 70, 80, whatever percentage fee discount, nobody's got time to listen to a long explanation on something. They need results, and they need results quickly. That means you've got to be very clear in what you say, and you've got to be very brief about what you say without losing the message. We have an overload of information coming at us via various sources these days, and the ability to communicate clearly and concisely will set you apart from others. Just again, some research shows that South African executives report that they spend about 37 seconds reading an email. If you cannot get your message across in less than half a minute, your message will be lost, particularly if it's buried on page 4. They won't even get to it. They'll read the first few paragraphs and just ignore it, which is not what you want. The clearer your message, the more likely it will be understood and acted upon. How do you do that? So you can firstly make sure you're using the available technology, Grammarly or Hemingway or any of the others. Take your paragraph or your sentence and put it into any of those tools and say, please simplify. And then it'll give you a much more succinct statement of what it is you're trying to say, particularly if you're not writing in the first language and you want to communicate, for example, in English as an example. Speak deliberately. Don't try to use long, fancy words because you're trying to impress somebody with your vocabulary. What you're trying to say will be lost in the translation, or you may use a very, very difficult word in the wrong context. Don't use jargon, and make sure you pause putting key points. In other words, say something, and even a 2 or 3 second pause allows what you've just said to resonate and to be fully understood, and for the recipient to have the opportunity to say, sorry, I'm not quite sure I understood that. Would you mind repeating it, or can you clarify? If you just speak non-stop, they're not going to get a chance to ask you any questions. And then apply what we call the bluff method. Bottom line up front. In other words, start with the critical message and then go into the detail and the elaboration, etc., etc. So that if somebody like your boss that's only got 30 seconds needs to get the critical message, they get it right up front. They can then decide, well, hang on a minute, this is important enough. I must spend longer on it than they would normally do. Whereas if your critical message is right down the bottom, they will probably never get to it. And then it's no good saying, but I did tell you about that at a later stage. So let's have a look at how we can use the bluff method. This is the normal kind of email that people tend to write. I've been working on the quarterly report and analyzing the sales data. After reviewing everything and comparing to last year's numbers, I found that we've increased our revenue by 15%. This is good news for the department. Blah-de, 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 blah. Okay, there is a message in there, but the message is right down the bottom of your email. Rather try it like this. Bottom line up front. Our quarterly sales increased 15%, which is 2.5 million over the last year. It doesn't matter if they read any further. They're already saying, wow, that's great. Then you can go on and say, if you want to know more about it, there's an attached report, and so on and so on and so on, and the detail. It was because in Joburg we did this, and in another place we did that, wada. But the bottom line message in this case is right up front. That's the critical message. The bluff version immediately delivers the most important information and saves the reader time and ensures that your key message is not buried somewhere within the text. The fourth skill is to improve your speech. The best communicators get the best opportunities. So the better you can communicate or give a message in a clear, confident way, that will enable you to obviously get accepted a lot quicker than somebody who mumbles and struggles. Record yourself speaking and review it. I know it sounds funny when you listen to yourself in a recording. With Teams or Zoom these days, you can set up a meeting with yourself, put it on record and play back the recording and see, how did I do? How did I sound? What sort of funny ums and ahs and oopses and whatever it was in between do I use unknowingly, because often it is unknowingly. Eliminate filler words like I've just said. You don't want to be saying every second or third word, or use an expression like, or you know all the time. That's grammar you must remove from your vocabulary and talk to the point. Join a speaking group like Toastmasters, or even volunteer to present at the next meeting or to manage the site, etc., etc. The more you practice, the less clumsy you will become, the more confident you will become, the better able you will be to articulate yourself as in the verbal sense. From a South African perspective, you can go to Toastmasters, but it costs you money. You can get professional coaching, costs you even more money. And you can use one of the various self-practice tools, or even just, as I said, recording yourself on Teams and video and voice, if you like, so you can watch your facial expression as well, or just stand in front of the mirror and talk to that person looking at you, introduce yourself to yourself once and again, and see how you do. All ways you can improve your speaking. 20 minutes of deliberate practice 2 to 3 times a week. you will find will dramatically improve your speaking skills within as little as a month. Not a lot of your time, worthwhile investment in making yourself more eloquent. Articulate yourself and look at, who do I want to be like? Who speaks well and why do they speak well? What is their posture? What is their mannerism? Can I model myself on that individual and improve? The next thing is to build your connections. Your network determines your opportunities. It always amazes me, the students in our universities, like an organization like SASI. You can join it for free, costs you nothing. You immediately have access to a network of 15,000 people. You will never, ever, ever get a network that large with the same interests as you anywhere in the world than by joining someone like SASI. And it's free. Once you've graduated, then the hope is that you stay a member of SASI. Yes, it's for a fee, but again, you have a network of people in the same environment with you where all the opportunities that you may wish for are created. In a relationship-orientated business, the more you know people is often much more important than what you know. It's not what you know, it's who you know is the same. And again, from research, 85% of jobs are generally filled via networking. Apologies for that popping up. And on average, it's worth an extra 150,000 in earnings per year. One of the best organizations and or networks from an engineering civil perspective, obviously, is SASI. And if you aren't a member of SASI, scan the QR code and get going and make it happen sooner rather than later. As far as strategic networking is concerned, they say that 15% is the percentage of senior professionals who respond to thoughtful connection requests from people they don't know. In other words, a cold call or a cold email. Value, they say that at 78% is the increase in response rate when you're introduced by a mutual connection. So rather than you approaching somebody on your own, if you know somebody who works with that individual or for that individual, get them to introduce you. They can pop an email and say, "Hi, Bob, I just thought I would use this opportunity to introduce Shirley to you. Shirley's an ex-colleague of mine or somebody who was studying but a year or two behind me. She or he is in the market at the moment for a new opportunities." And then it gives you as a 15% from a cold call to a higher 78% by getting introduced by someone else. And what about just having a quick coffee chat? Stand at the coffee machine, talk to somebody, or say to somebody, "What are you doing after work?" Or, "Are you free at lunchtime? Would you mind if we have a quick coffee? I'll even pay for it." But technically, if you're drinking the office's coffee, it costs you nothing. It costs you absolutely nothing to potentially open doors that otherwise would not have been open. If you meet someone new at a function or at an event or at a conference, one of the things you can do is to ask for their business card or get their contact detail, pop a little short email either later that day or the following day to say, "Hi, Bob, it was lovely to meet you at wada wada wada. Let's hope that we can communicate further, or we can do business further, or we can do whatever." It doesn't need to be a sales pitch, but you are just showing the person that you valued the interaction with them on the previous day or whenever it was. The sixth skill, and I'm afraid we are losing the skill, despite it being a very strong continent of Africa culture, the ability to tell stories. Why can't we tell stories? They tend to build a great rapport and create trust, particularly within our diverse culture. You should be able to practice deliberately telling a story. Look for opportunities where you can take your issue and weave it into a story. Create a scene so that those listening to the problem and the solution already are visualizing the scene in which it is being done. Use the CSS format. That's challenge, the stake, the solution. What is the issue? Why did it matter? And how was it resolved? Build a story bank. Keep a document with 5 to 10 work stories that demonstrate your key strengths and experiences. You've got a story to tell. Only you can tell your story. I do a lot of mock interviews with candidates that are applying for registration as part of the Marcelo Kani program. And we always tell the candidate, we can't tell you what to say. It's not my life and my work experience that I'm projecting. You have to be able to convince a panel of assessors that what you are telling them is a worthwhile story and that you have met the various competencies. Be capable of telling your story. That's very, very important. And just as an aside, stories are 22 times more likely and more memorable to be recognized and understood than just saying a random fact as an example. Let's have a look at how we can do it in action. So let's start with the challenge. Our Cape Town store was consistently underperforming by 32% compared to other locations, despite having similar foot traffic. What was the stake? This represented nearly 2 million in lost annual revenue and put several jobs at risk if we could not turn it around. The solution? By analyzing local customer preferences and adjusting our inventory mix, we increased sales by 45% within 3 months. So in this case, it's a sales company selling product, which is not necessarily what we're in. We sell services and skills. It's a lot more difficult. You can't just simply change your skill set all of a sudden. But I think the lesson, challenge yourself. What is the problem? Work out what is at stake and then come up with a solution as fast as you can. The structure will help people listening to you to follow your story and remember the key points that demonstrated the value that you were trying to add. So it's a way for you to build your story around what the problem is, what is at stake, and what you're proposing as a potential solution to that problem. The next skill is to send, we call it in Friday updates, but you can pick any day of the week. Even if you are not asked, be proactive in communicating about your work to ensure that those that you're working for or with start to build a trust with you and the decisions that you are making. Simply weekly email, being the difference between overlooked and being top of mind when opportunities arise. Who's the person that keeps me the most well informed? Who's the person I'm going to want to put up for a next or opportunity? It's that person that I know will take on the project and keep me well informed. The person who just knuckles down and does it, and we've got one of the topics in our series called Working Harder is not necessarily the right way, it's working smarter. Keep it concise. You can't give a long, as I said, thesis or dissertation that somebody's going to take 3 months to work through or to read. It's got to be short and succinct, and we'll give you an example in a moment. Set a reminder for yourself whenever you have decided that that update is going to be. Let's have a look at a typical template. What I complete this week, 3 to 5 quick bullet points. Include any metrics where possible, rand saved, progress made, whatever the process was. Highlight any collaborations with other members or other teams in that report. What am I working on next? 2 to 3 priorities for what I've got planned in the week ahead. Any deadlines or milestones that are fast approaching and whether I'm on track or not on track. How they will connect to the team and or the company's goals or the project's goals. And then finally, do I need anything? Any specific resources or decisions required from the person with whom you are communicating or that they can influence is obviously clear. And make sure they are clear requests, not complaints. Propose solutions if there are blockers as to how you think just in order to get tacit approval, or you can say this is the way I'm planning on solving it to give them the opportunity to make a different decision. In the subject format, you would say weekly up-to-date from Bob, week ending, what's tomorrow's date? 29th of August, 2025. Let's have a look at an example. This is from Tabo. He's a fictitious person. Week ending the 15th of October, which was last week or the week before. What I completed, what I'm working on next, and what I need from you, and enjoy your weekend or enjoy the rest of the week, depending on the day of the week. Simple, straight, exactly as you see it on the screen, no more detail than that, and that ensures there's a constant stream of communication between yourself and your supervisor. The next skill we suggest you need to learn is to be a diplomat. Now, we're not suggesting you go into politics and you go and work as the South African ambassador to whatever country, but what we are saying is you need to be able to navigate work politics with grace. Always maintain the moral high ground, and that means that you should avoid certain situations. From a South African workplace perspective, your diplomatic skills will be essentially valuable in different cultural and communication environments. The first is you should never participate in gossip. Very, very difficult to just recuse from any conversations about criticizing somebody else. Even if you see criticism, don't party to it, because your reputation being concrete become valuable. Separate issues from the people. Often the messenger is victim or the subject of an annoyance, when in fact they are merely relaying the situation. Can you just mute there for us, please, Shirley or Yanku or whoever? Okay, so make sure you address problems without attacking somebody's character. You know, the deadline was missed rather than you're always late. You know, just say, sorry, we had a real tight deadline. It's created a problem by making a blunt statement like, you know, you're always late. That's not kind to the person. If you want to be unkind, do it in an environment where it doesn't put them in a predicament in front of their peers. And always try to remain calm, irrespective of the situation. Take a 5-second pause before you respond, can assist you to stop saying something that you will regret if you respond instantly. Think about what you're going to say and say it carefully. Here's a couple of things that we believe is a toolkit that you can use. When tensions arise, use an expression like, I appreciate your passion on this. Let's just take a step back and make sure we're addressing the core issue, because sometimes people will be very, very vociferous for their point of view or their perspective, and that's not necessarily always the right approach to adopt. I see this differently, and I'd like to understand your perspective better. Can you help me understand your reasoning? You know, why are you saying what you are saying? When someone attacks, and there's always going to be somebody who's aggressive in the nature in which they manage situations, you've just got to calmly and in a relaxed and very gentle manner say, let's focus on finding a solution that works for the team rather than determining who is right or wrong. In other words, you are trying to achieve harmonious problem solving rather than allowing somebody who's got a strong personality to control the narrative. And if you need a bit of time in order to get to a conclusion, just say that this is a very important topic. It deserves my thoughtful consideration. Can I reflect on this and get back to you tomorrow or Monday morning or whenever, so that it gives you a bit of time to think about how you're going to handle the situation that you confront yourself with. These phrases in those circumstances will greatly assist you in maintaining your professional relationship, even when you are in disagreement or there are disagreements amongst the members of your team. The 9th skill is to memorize names. Everybody likes to hear the sound of their own name. When you walk up to somebody and you know their name and you can say, hello, Joseph, nice to see you again. How are you doing? Okay, it's not an easy skill to develop because often, you know, I always see many of my ex-students, I sort of recognize their face, but I really cannot remember their name. And most of them have cleaned up so much or grown a lot bigger in size that I don't necessarily recognize them at the first place. But people close to you or people you work with, make sure you try to remember their names. People whose names you remember are 62% more likely to remember you positively and consider you for future opportunities. Who was that
Like
lovely young
I
gentleman?
think Ogana just to be sure.
Who was that? Sorry.
Can we please mute our mics?
You can just mute them. I think you just click mute all and it should mute them, Shirley. Okay, let's just do a few ticks on how you can do that. I'm mindful of the time. So the first is to take notes. Obviously, you can't say, what is your name? And would you mind spelling it for me? Wada. But after a function or after a meeting or after wherever you've been, just go down and nowadays with notes on your phone, you can quickly jot it and say 28th of August 2025, SASI function at UJ, met, and then, you know, Friedrich Slubbert, SASI president, Yanko Banda, chair of E&T committee, wow, whoever. Just that helps you to remember so that at a later stage you can associate. You can't make them give you a selfie unless they had agreed to a selfie, and then you can put a name to the pictures. So if that helps you to remember. If you are going to be attending an event where you know important are going to be there, try and work out who's going to be there and who are the people that you must make sure you go and you introduce yourself to or engage in a conversation with. Imagine walking up to somebody and saying, hello, Yanku, it's nice to meet you. We met online at the SASI SAS webinar in August. Nice to put a face to the name and the voice, blah, 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 blah. Thirdly, you can master pronunciation. This is a critical skill. I can remember when I was the head of department and I had to do the graduation ceremony, I would spend hours and hours and hours with my staff practicing how I pronounce names and all the other funny things that you have to do in different languages. The worst thing you can do is have somebody completely botch the pronunciation of your name. And often it's not easy not to botch it, but at least if you try to pronounce people's names correctly, that is something that they will always respect you for and value. And then finally, if you do forget, and it happens to the best of us, just use the expression, I'm so sorry, I've forgotten your name. Would you mind reminding me who you are again? It will show that you are authentic and you are respectful of them. You want to know who they are, but you just can't remember at the moment what their name is. Again, making an effort to correctly remember and pronounce people's names from different cultural backgrounds or regions or wherever they're from will demonstrate genuine respect for that individual and for their culture. And then the final skill is to become curious. You know, you will know, those of you in the meeting and the session tonight on the call who have got your own children will know that little children only really know one word when they are growing up, and that is why. Doesn't matter what answer you give them, they will follow it up with yet another why. Why is it that as we grow older, and as in Simon Sinek told you right at the beginning, always start with why? Why do we stop asking why? Being curious leads to knowledge and to new opportunities. If you don't know how something works, investigate and find out how it works. Read widely across disciplines. So, you know, I recommended you read Simon Sinek's book. There are other books that you can read that are equally as inspiring that will assist you. Even if you don't read cover to cover in one go, you know, and you read one chapter at a time, become an avid reader. Dedicate 20 minutes to reading about topics that are not technical in nature, structural or geotechnical or transport or water or whatever they are. You know, even if you read business magazines or I'm not suggesting you go and read, you know, rag magazines that you find in newspaper shops that have got stories on all the scandal that's going on wherever, but read stuff outside of your comfort zone. Use the 5 why technique. And I'm going to demonstrate an example for you in a moment. But ask why 5 times until you can get to the root cause, rather than just addressing the symptoms. You know, why is this? Why is there a problem? Why is it happening in the way it is happening? Why is it happening now? Why is nothing being done about it? So there are lots of ways you can apply the why technique. Shift from being judgmental to asking a question. So rather than say that won't work, say, well, what would make this work? What is it that you're confident about that what you're proposing would make it work? And always be open to new possibilities. Curious people receive 31% more positive performance reviews and 1.4 times more promotions within business than people who just go with the flow and never ever show. Let's show you the technique in practice. So the problem we have is that sales are down 15%, and we use a lot of sales examples, although they're not necessarily relative to a technical environment, but they're easier to demonstrate. The first why is, why are sales down? And the reason they are down is because fewer customers are completing purchases. Okay, that leads me to the next question. Why aren't customers completing purchases? Well, because the checkout process is taking too long and customers are simply abandoning their carts. It could be a physical cart in a Checkers or a Pick n Pay, or it could be an online shopping cart like we have in our online on-demand courses section of the SASI website. Why is the checkout taking too long? Well, because the new payment system is processing transactions slowly. So if you don't ever get a chance to pay, you'll eventually just say cancel order. Why is it the payment system slow? Well, because it's not optimized for the local South African payment methods that most customers prefer. Is that SnapScan? Is that whatever the other ones are, or EFT or credit card, or, you know, how do people like to pay? And if I've developed a system that doesn't accommodate people's likes, particularly different generations, then you're not going to have any customers. And then why has it not been optimized? Well, because we didn't conduct proper market research or payment preferences for the Durban market. So often people come up with what they think is a solution without testing to see, is it really a solution? Optimize the payment system for local methods by EFT, mobile money, or e-wallet in order to reduce checkout time will result in an improved increase in sales. Problem solved. And again, as we said, always start with why, as per Simon Sinek's entire book talks about why people and companies start with why. Let's quickly how you can measure your soft skills, because I know we're heading out of time. You need at least 30 minutes per week to start working on forming some of these new habits and behaviors. Don't try to do more than 3 at a time. That's the optimal number of new habits and or skills to be working and focusing on simultaneously. You're not going to be able to take all 10 that we've covered tonight and tomorrow be a master at them. That's not going to happen. Look for at least a 15% improvement. It's compounded. Remember, a small improvement all the time over a long time is a substantive improvement in your ability and your skill set over time. Make sure you're tracking your progress with each of the different metrics that you've set yourself. In other words, as one of the examples, that's remembering people's names. Check how many times you remembered people's names. And if you give yourself a target of 10 names, did you get 10 out of 10, or did you only get Angie's pass rate of 3 out of 10, as an example? Use the bluff method at all times possible to communicate. And remember, like anything, what you can measure is always what you will improve. If there's no metric by which you can measure your progress, there's unlikely to be any progress in terms of improvement. Here's a quick plan for you. Pick the 3 skills that resonated the most with you. Define what your success metrics will be. How you going, will you know if you are improving? Schedule practice. Allow yourself 20 to 30 minutes in your calendar at least 3 times a week to practice whatever of the skills are that you are developing. And then make sure you rely on your colleagues, your friends, your peers, your family immediately around you to give you trusted feedback. You need to know, is what I'm doing working, so that if it isn't working, I can tweak it and adjust it in order to do better. 90 minutes per week will transform your career trajectory within a quarter. So after 3 months, people will start saying, what's different about Bob? Why is Bob so confident in the way he or she goes about their work at the moment? Just some resources. We've mentioned workshops and training. Unfortunately, they come at a cost. You can get professional coaching, which is even more expensive. And obviously, you can use your peer groups. If you belong to a student chapter or you belong to a branch or a division, there are opportunities for you to practice many of these skills amongst people who will be non-judgmental on your capability. What is the rate of investment of soft skills development? So there you can see, I'm not going to talk into it, but there's a 90% almost improvement on the chances of a promotion. The salary growth, unfortunately, is the least, but still it sits at 30%. But getting better job satisfaction and better team performance are in excess of 50%, which is a desirable mark to achieve. If you're a South African professional, as all of you are, who deliberately intend to hopefully develop your soft skills, either with our help or on your own, it will result in about a 75 to 120,000 Rand per annum improvement in your earning capability. In other words, you'll be able to find the right job that rewards what you are worth. You will find you've got a lot shorter time frame from one level to being promoted to the next level. There's a 72% higher likelihood of being selected for high visibility projects. You will become the go-to person, the most trusted person, reliable person, and capable person amongst your peers. And very importantly, and I know this is not always highly valued, but there will be a 63% greater job satisfaction and engagement. In other words, by developing in yourself and investing in yourself, you will feel better about what you do and how you do it. Your investment in time will definitely pay dividends throughout your entire career, unlike technical skills that may become obsolete and you may need to be updating and improving. Habits and or soft skills will become life-changing and sustainable throughout your career. A couple of takeaways. Don't wait until tomorrow. Start today. After this webinar ends, say to yourself, which of those things that Uncle Tom told me about am I going to start working on immediately? Make sure you are practicing deliberately everything that you are intending. Don't think it's going to happen on its own. It takes effort. Nothing is achieved without effort. Look for feedback, even if it's negative feedback. You need to know, am I touching the right nodes here, that I'm achieving the right objective? And be patient. Don't expect to immediately tomorrow wake up and start to even look like a different person. That's unlikely to happen. Technical skills will get you hired, but soft skills will get you promoted. And that's the key message that I think we are trying to relay in terms of the soft skills series of courses. I hope that you will start to focus on at least 3 of the skills that I have gone through this evening in terms of the 10 that we showed you. And then before we try and go onto the website so I can show you how it works, here's a couple of wide words from, and I've never called myself Uncle Tom, but it would appear that's the name that the Sasi family has now given me. The first thing is, watch what you are thinking. Watch your thoughts. They become the words that you express. Watch the words that you express, because they become your actions. Watch your actions, because they will become your habits. You won't even realize you are doing it repeatedly. So be careful about how you act and what you say. Your habits, in turn, will become your character. And most importantly, watch your character, because it will become your destiny within this profession of ours. You need to decide what kind of life do you want, and then say no to everything else that isn't that. In other words, only you can decide, what direction do I take my life? What habits and or skill set do I want to develop to make me more successful and, more importantly, happier in the work that I'm doing? And if all of those things don't work, then you need to seriously consider changing your career. If it doesn't give you job satisfaction, then you're in the wrong career. I'm hoping this is going to work now. So I'm going to quickly show you the Sasi website for those of you who have not visited it, and you heard Janku. There's the landing page. You can see at the top here, it's got the Sasi Academy, or alternatively, you can drag the banner across. If you hit this browse catalog, it'll take you into the Sasi Academy catalog. You heard Janku mentioning the GCC course. If you look at the face-to-face courses, for those that want to do the GCC course in person, there's only one available at the moment. It's going to be in George, in the Southern Cape, as requested by the Southern Cape branch. If I'm going to just click back and go to the previous page. If I click on online courses, these are the webinar instructor-led courses. You can see there's a short webinar being done by Prof. Armitage sometime next week. There are various others. If I scroll down there, you can see there is a GCC conversion course, which is the one Janku was referring to on the 18th of September. But for those that are not available or can't make the 18th of September, there's another one coming up on the 2nd of October, if that may be more convenient. And whilst the course may look costly, it does include a copy of the GCC, which is valued at 1,250 for a member and 1,450 for a non-member. And then very importantly, we want you to go and we want you to have a look at our self-paced learning materials. So it's quite important, if you've never ever used the self-paced learning facility, which is journals or online courses or webinars, you need to firstly go and register. So you click online registration. You see it will open up an opportunity for you. It defaults to a member registration. Member, you would go and you would put in your Sasi membership number here and follow the process. It goes onto the Sasi's database using an API. It checks, it validates that you are a member. And the reason why we're suggesting you make sure you do that is because all SASE courses on the platform are discounted for members, and resources like the registration guidelines that I'm going to show you in a moment are actually free if you are a SASE member. So you don't have to pay anything for them. If you're a non-member, you would obviously click non-member, because if you try to register as a member and it cannot find your name, excuse me, in the through the API on the database, it's not going to allow you to register. Once you've created your account, then you would go to the login, and that will take you into your domain in order to browse it. But I wanted to just show you the kind of things that you can do. The re-journals, funnily enough, have been there for the last 10 years or so, long before we introduced webinars and all the COVID, post-COVID and during COVID things. The ENT committee had decided we needed to make access to CPD more widely accessible. So the way that the platform works on all three, the re-journals, the webinars on demand, or online courses, is the most recent thing that's been added goes on the top. So whatever is added, and it doesn't show you when it was added, will always appear on the top on the left, but you can scroll down and you can look for it. If you, for example, are in the railway sector and you only want to see what journals are there available in the railway sector, you select the railway from the menu, and you'll see that water course will disappear. And at this point in time, there's only one course that is pure railway engineering on the platform. These courses are all worth 0.2 CPD points or 0.3 CPD points, and it allows you to accumulate your CPD points. You do have to pass an assessment, as you do for all of these, but they are very easily to access. The second, which is also new, we've only had it up and running for a month now, is webinars on demand. So like this webinar, we will add it to this platform in due course. What happens is you attend a webinar, and you can see we started off with the Knowledge Trailblazer webinars with webinar number 1. We did number 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we've uploaded 5 and 6. And in the next week or so, we'll upload 7 and 8. And we hopefully will catch up right up to 15. Then down the right-hand side, you will eventually see SASE SAS or SASE Civil Talks or SASE Ethics, and so on and so on and so on. This ethics one here is actually the one that students attend at the universities. We know that you are required as a student to get the attendance certificate. The exit policy states very clearly that any online event, to qualify for the certificate, like this evening's webinar, you need to be in the webinar for at least 10 minutes shy of the length of the webinar. So if we are validating this event for 1.5 hours, you have to be in the webinar for 1 hour and 20 minutes. If you're in for 1 hour, 19 minutes and 59 seconds, then according to the exit policy, you will not get issued a certificate. The reason we've added these webinars on demand is because many people either miss out on getting the CPD points. That will allow them to go on. Yes, there's a small fee attached to it, but also circumstances. They registered for the webinar. They really, really wanted to attend and hear what was to be said, but they missed it due to work pressure or other commitments. Those webinars are now available on the online on-demand platform. Remember, you cannot use any of these platforms and benefit from the discount. If I select this one, for example, it'll open up and give me a little bit more information about the webinar. There we go. There's a fee of 300 Rand, and you see it says here it's discounted for SASE members. So it always defaults to the non-member fee, and you've got to select and register and log in as a member. If I go to the final one, which I wanted to show you where our soft skills are, and I've jumped out of it now. Let's go back here. I'm going to the self-paced learning from the drop-down menu. I wanted to show you browse online courses. Here again, it does give you a reminder right at the top of the landing page for self-paced learning. To use the resources, you must have registered an account. So you would do the online registration, create your own username and password, and thereafter you just use the same username and password. I'd recommend you tell it to remember you, so you don't have to remember what you called yourself and what your password was again. But let's have a look at the courses. And there's been some magic during the course of today, because I knew I was talking to you this evening. And hey, presto, have a look what is right at the top of the available courses to you. There are 4 of the Mastering Soft Skills as an Engineering Professional being uploaded already. You can see there's a Mastering Soft Skills subset here on their own. Because they're the most recent courses that have been added, they are right at the top. We don't have to worry too much about order because they're not numbered. Immediately below them, before that, was all the EXA outcomes. 7 is outcome 1, 8 is outcome 2. Just by the way, these EXA outcomes, if you're a SASI member, they are 100% free. It's basically been designed in a 5-part system. Part A is generic stuff. What does outcome 1 mean? Where does it fit into the overall EXA outcome framework? What is the desired level of responsibility, DOR, that you have to achieve? And then just some bits and pieces of information about the outcome. Part B, if you're doing PR Eng, you would go to Part B. PR Tech Eng would go to Part C. PR Technician would go to Part D. So the technicians can miss B and C, and the technologists can miss B and go straight to C. And all of you then would go to Part E, which is very, very practical tips. One of the SASI members from the Southern Cape, structural engineer, has used it very efficiently. He tried to register and was refused, used it and came back to me and said the most valuable thing to him in all of these modules was Part E. So we're not advocating that you go and sit and listen to Tom's dull voice for hours and hours and hours. You can listen to it for a shorter period of time by just having a look at Part E. Entirely and completely free for members and at a small fee for non-members. If you're wanting to read more about what is this soft skill, again, if you click on the course will take you into a brochure that will explain what do we mean about transformative leadership skills. And there you can see, you can go and read up and see whatever without committing to purchase the course. Only when you are happy and you're ready to purchase the course can you go ahead and buy. And it works exactly like Takealot or any of those online. You'll see if you select a course, take the course, it'll put it into your trolley. And then there is an e-commerce functionality. If you want your employer to pay, you can ask the system to generate an invoice for you made out to your employer or your company, or if you're going to charge your buddy as a birthday gift or give it to them as a birthday gift or whatever you're going to do, and then you can pay it. The way the system works is if you use a credit card or an EFT, you would have immediate access to the course you've registered for. It would go into your courses. This login has another button next to it that says My Courses. I won't show you mine because every course on the platform is in mine, so I've got hundreds of the things. And I don't want to go into the back office. But they would all be there for you, and it will show you your progress. So if you start and you get interrupted, doesn't matter. You can go back to it as and when you have time. I would strongly advise, although these soft skills are only 0.1 CPD points, they aren't expensive and they are very, very worthwhile for you. If you enjoyed the little snapshot I have given you this evening, then I would certainly recommend. And like I said, there are 4 live. I have got another 2 that we're busy loading onto the platform that will go live hopefully early next week. And then the objective, and I saw some of our interns that Sanral is kindly funding who've been working on these topics for the SASI Academy are in the session. My thanks to Londi and Ayanda and Zinchle and all the other interns who've been working on the topics. Hopefully they themselves, in developing the content for SASI Academy, have gained some valuable insights in their own soft skill trajectory. Hopefully that gives you some insight into how the platform works. Let's go back to our presentation. It's got to close all the things that shouldn't be open here. Right. Okay, I was going to try, but I see we've run out of time to run through the critical pillars of your future self. But I think surely in the interest of time, I'd much rather perhaps hop out now and handle any questions that any of the... This, by the way, we were going to give you a sample. This one's not on the platform yet, but it will be uploaded in the near future. So Shirley and Yanku, I don't know if you are both still in the session, and hopefully we haven't lost all of the attendees, but I'm quite happy to handle any questions that have either been put into the chat and or alternatively, I can obviously handle any questions that are not answered in the chat later on this evening or tomorrow. Shirley, over to you and Janku. Shirley and Janku still there? Janku, I see you still there. I don't see Shirley anymore. Yeah, Janku, I don't know if you've monitored the chat, if there are...
No, the main questions that are being asked are mainly on sharing the presentation, if it will be available. So I think with you having gone through that, yeah.
I will go. Obviously, I won't share how you go and access and create an account because that's not in the slides, but I will certainly share with the delegates the slides that were covered this evening, and they can obviously then extract their 3 key pillars that they are going to select for themselves to work on over the next few weeks to months. Perhaps what I should say, it will be very, very interesting from my perspective if you do go in and do some shopping, to give us feedback, whether you found the evening and the stuff I covered beneficial. Is it something that resonates with you as young professionals and or even students as you pursue your career within this environment of ours that I've worked in for over 50 years now? I wouldn't still be in it if I didn't get a great deal of satisfaction being within the profession. But give us feedback. We love criticism, positive and or negative. You can email me at tom@sasi.org.za, or you can email Cheryl Lee with a hyphen at sasi.org.za, or alternatively, just keep attending our webinars. The next webinar is the Knowledge Trailblazer webinar. I don't know if you saw in the advertising, I'll pop the link into the chat before I log off this evening. It's going to be on what you weren't taught regarding soils laboratory and using a soils laboratory when you were a student. So again, very valuable thing. Tumela, would you like to go ahead and engage?
Yes, hi, Uncle Tom. In light that there are no questions or that many questions, can you maybe perhaps finish up your presentation?
I'm happy. I'm happy for those that would like to stay in to run through the rest of the slides quickly. And then at least it gives you the benefit of the stuff that we weren't doing. For those of you who do need to step out because you've got other commitments and or responsibilities, it's not going to help your CPD, unfortunately, because we'll only register the event or have already done so for 0.15 points. But yeah, sure, I'm quite happy to do the rest of the presentation for you. Shall I dive straight in?
Janku, before you do that, there was another question. There was another question where someone was asking that they registered as for EXA and SACPMP. So in terms of the CPD, do they qualify for both, one or the other? How does that work?
So at the moment, at the moment, we are only getting recognition for registration by EXA, but SASI is a recognized voluntary association with the SACPCMP. And I have been trying the last was directly with the president of SACPCMP to get a reciprocity when it's a construction related and or like these soft skills are more generic than just, it's probably more suited to project managers and construction managers. So at the moment, these little webinars that we run and our stuff on the website is only SASI and EXA validated, but the intention, like GCC, is to have the course validated for both SACPCMP. We fully understand that maintaining CPD and related is a costly exercise, which is partly why we've developed the online platform and why we offer so many webinars. For those of you who don't attend SASI webinars, and I saw many names on the registration schedule earlier that attend all of our webinars, even though they themselves are SASI members, they change in the future. But at the moment, we are welcoming them with open arms. You don't need to pay money to get CPD points. You can get enough of them between the divisions and the branches that you can qualify. But at the moment, the EXA.
All right, Tom. I just wanted to find out GCC that you're mentioning, you talk about general contracts or you talk about the GCC, the government.
No, not talking about the certificate of competence. We're talking about the general conditions of contract, which is a SAICI publication and very prevalent within the civil sector, infrastructure sector. We are launching the publication of GCC 2025. In fact, it's next Tuesday. So the book will be available to purchase, the new GCC. There are different pricing models. So there's discounted prices for students. In fact, students is the lowest costing. And there are prices for bulk purchases and so on and so on and so on. So general conditions of contract, definitely not government certificate of competence, no.
And then do you also cover the what's on this general condition contract, the JBC, the other contracts, or it's just that?
No. The JBC and FIDIC and NEC and those things are all competing forms of contract. GCC is SAICI's form of contract, and obviously the delay, it was going to be published in 2023, was because we had to wait for CIDB endorsement of the new GCC code. There will be a guidebook being published as we had for 2015, but that's taking a little bit longer because it's a lot more detailed. We're hoping to publish that by the end of October, early November, that would accompany the GCC. And we are also going to publish it digitally as an ebook through Juta, but that hasn't quite happened yet because the launch is coming quicker than what we expected. So we're going to have hard copies available from next week, Tuesday or Wednesday.
Okay, no, it's fine. Noted. Thanks.
Excellent. Okay, and please, those that are unable to stick around for a while longer, feel free to go. I won't be offended. And let me quickly run into the webinar again, into the slide deck, and I will continue. I see it's jumped back to the beginning, which is not where we want to start again. Right, so I said I'm going to give you a sample, and as you've requested me to do so, let me carry on. So all of the courses start with this sort of a layout. We obviously go through a disclaimer relating to the courses because these are not the views of SAICI, although the courses are run and managed by the SAICI Academy. They are the views of various professionals who've contributed to the content. And then, as I said, we've used interns who are qualified graduates from various institutions that have been working on developing the material for us as a PowerPoint animated document. So let's talk now about these critical pillars. I'm going to ask you a very, very long in the distant future. Most of you probably haven't thought about this, but my question to you is, where will you be in 10 years' time? And do you realize that that could come down to 7 choices that you are making right now? So I'm going to go through some of the choices that you possibly are making. You may be making wrong choices and need to readjust and adapt accordingly. But the objective is to talk about some critical decisions that you should make in your life in order to ensure that in 10 years' time, you're not regretting lost time. You know, it's easy to, hindsight is a wonderful science, as they say, but that doesn't necessarily mean we've all got time to redo things that we didn't do well the first time we did them. So let's start off by making choices. What are you going to do today? A small decision that you make today may seem insignificant in the current circumstances. It's a sort of little consequence. It's not a big deal in your life, but ultimately it could have a big influence in your life. Secondly, it will have a compound effect. What we mean by a compound effect is that when you make those choices, they accumulate over weeks, months, and years to shape the trajectory that you are on. A little bit like the worm that they use in cricket. If you see that your worm is lagging behind your peers, it's a lot more difficult to accelerate and to improve and make better decisions when your decisions were influenced perhaps by the wrong people that you associate with. What is your future reality? What will your life be in 2035? And I'm telling you that your life in 2035 will be as a direct result of the habits that you practice, and inculcate into your daily life today. Your next 10 years will not be built in one big leap. Yes, you're going to age. Your birthday is going to come around every year. You start to wish it wouldn't when you get to my age, but it's going to happen. It's inevitable. Time is the only non-discriminatory thing in the world. No matter how you view it and what you do, the clock goes 24 hours for everybody, depending on where you are in the world. And yes, it starts at a different time, but you don't get 24 and a half hours in a day. Your life is ticking away. You need to make choices today in order to not regret where you are in 10 years' time. So let's start off by, what do you do when you first wake up? The first hour of your day. Now, it'll differ. Some of you may be fitness fanatics or exercise fanatics. Some of you may like to sleep in late. You struggle to get out of bed in the morning, and so on and so on and so on. But that first hour of the day will set the tone for the 10 hours that will follow in your day, or shorter hours if you don't are not active for 11 to 12 hours of the day. Developing and having a purposeful routine in the morning will help you to create momentum, particularly on work days. Yes, by all means, adjust your clock on a weekend when you're not necessarily having to be at the office or online, or whatever it is, by a certain time. But the early bird catches the worm is not just a saying in nature, it is the fact in life. Successful South Africans, and there are many, many people, if you ask them, how did you succeed in your career, will tell you, we've invested in our routine in the morning, whether that's a cup of coffee from your favorite coffee spot, whether that's reading through a journal or taking vitamins or whatever it is doing. You can't achieve something without spending some money or putting in some effort. Energy, focus, and your clarity aren't found, they are created. So we are saying, if you spend your mornings correctly, you will find a lot more energy and focus. Even if one of your habits is the minute you wake up in the morning, drink a glass of water. Hydration is a big problem in a country where you've got high temperatures. People don't drink enough water. So make yourself, have a habit. First thing I do in the morning is there is a glass or a bottle or a liter of water next to me. And whilst you may not feel like drinking it, make yourself drink it. And every morning when the glass is not there, you will be wondering, where's my water? Because it will become a habit. Let's have a look at some morning rituals of some high achievers. And we've not mentioned names here, but you can associate some of these things with people that you know that are successful. The first thing is something called mindfulness. That is taking 10 to 15 minutes of meditation or breath work to ensure that your core is nicely centered before you set out on the demands of the day. And your day often will not turn out the way you'd expected it to work out. It may go completely off the rails. If you start off already being in a poor mindset, it's going to be a lot worse. The more calm you are, the more relaxed you are when you start your day, the more you will find that you can handle that you otherwise would not necessarily have handled. A short physical movement, even if it's just taking a time out to go around the block or to do whatever, is always worthwhile to you. Make sure that you exercise, and you'll find, I'm not suggesting you go on a quick 5-kilometer run, because if you're like me, you will then have to go to hospital, but exercise and do something that assists you to be energetic. Make sure you set priorities. If you're forgetful and you procrastinate, write them down. Write down 3 things. And if you go to sleep at night, or you're trying to go to sleep and something's bugging you, worrying you, take out a piece of paper or have a pen and paper next to the bed or wherever you sleep and write it down. The fact that you're recording it somewhere, which is then going to set your mind at rest, that you won't forget. It's there for when you wake up tomorrow so you can achieve it. It'll help you to have a much more peaceful sleep. What do you do when nobody is watching? That is the critical question, because you shouldn't only be doing things in the appropriate manner or consistently when you are being observed, when you are in an environment where there are other people. It's what you do when nobody is watching that is highly critical. So discipline on your own, when you're by yourself, will build credibility when you are in public. Having integrity and being resilient will compound over time as you move along in your career. private victories, in other words, when your chummies are out having a hell of a party, but you are studying, saving money when everybody else is blowing their money, whatever your passion and or your poison is, make sure that you are always doing the positive things to improve your ability as a professional. The stuff that you do that's not seen by others is what will help you to create excellence. For example, and this is again from research, most entrepreneurs in the Western Cape, in Cape Town, in the Cape Town region, to run their businesses start their day at 4:30 in the morning. And I'm not talking about people that take 2 hours to get to work. They take 5 or 10 minutes to get to work, or they work wherever they live. They are entrepreneurs. They're using online tools and technique. So if you're only starting to wake up at 7:30, you are already 3 hours behind the other people. But obviously they don't go to bed at 1:30 because then they would be exhausted. Make sure that you are spending 2.5 hours daily. And that sounds like a lot of time, but it's not a lot of time when you consider how much time you spend on social media, watching TV and doing all sorts of things that you possibly enjoy doing, but are not adding any value to your skill set. So spend time by conducting daily practice of the things that you are trying to improve in your day-to-day life. Make sure that you invest money. This is the amount of money that some people are investing monthly in investing in books or courses or in spending time with a mentor. Yes, when you are with a mentor, you are not doing other things, but sometimes having a mentor who can give you direction and guidance and advice is a very positive thing. And my wife gets cross with me when I go into exclusive books because I inevitably leave with a whole big packet, some of which I probably won't read in the next 5 or 10 years, but I buy books and I have lots and lots of books, and they're not engineering books. They're books about all sorts of stuff that I like to read to enhance my own skill set. Very important, particularly if you are young and impressionable. The people you surround yourself with have a big influence on where you're going in your life. Proximity is either your power, if it's the right people, or it's your poison if they are the wrong people. If you are a studious person and your best buddies are party animals, you need to find new friends because they're going to encourage you. You don't want to be the odd one out. You don't want to be anti-establishment. So you're going to go with the flow and spend the whole evening, yes, perhaps enjoying yourself, but that enjoyment is short-lived. The 5 people that you spend the most time with will determine your mindset, what opportunities you will have, and what your growth trajectory will be. So choose those people wisely. You rise or fall to the level of the circle. People will often associate you with other people. If they see you constantly in the company of a certain type of person or a certain character, they will even immediately think that your character is exactly the same, even if it's not. So be very, very careful. If you want to earn more money, then your friends around you should be people who are earning more money, that are successful, in order that that success can rub off onto your shoulders. Very important. Where do you pay your attention? Scrolling is not a strategy. Yes, everybody and these cell phones are wonderful devices that created connectivity, but ask yourself, how much time am I spending checking Facebook, checking LinkedIn, doing stuff on a device that I should be spending otherwise? It's different if you are using LinkedIn to go and read articles or get inspiration from people about stuff. But if all you're doing it is to find the latest gossip and or what's latest shoes or handbag is available, then you are spending your time unproductively. Just as a matter of interest, most South Africans spend 3 hours per day on social media. 3 hours. And 2.5 hours I suggested where you are practicing habits is not even close to that. So still you can spend half an hour on social media, but rather spend your time doing productive things. They spend 5 or more hours on entertainment, whether that's watching Netflix, watching TV, going to the pub for drinks, or doing whatever you're doing, but 5 hours per day. They spend less than 30 minutes on what we call deliberate learning. In other words, intentional learning, like doing one of our online on-demand soft skills courses. If you do one a week, it's 1 hour of your time. Yes, and you're going to get the benefit at 0.1 CPD points, but you're going to learn stuff that you otherwise would not have had access to or knowledge to. Or reading a book. Book costs you 200-300 Rand for one book, and you can read it for the next 2 to 3 months and get lots of information. So where is your current focus? Let me ask you that. There's what we call passive consumption. Netflix, YouTube, social scrolling, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of those places. You can do what we call active learning. Are you spending time on books, reading books, attending courses, listening to podcasts? You're spending your time very fruitfully this evening in a SASI webinar, or being mentored by your mentor, who may be a peer or a colleague or just a family friend. How are you being creatively? What is your writing output? Is it something you are doing consistently as constructively as possible? Maybe you don't know how to code. Teach yourself to code. Then you can do all sorts of automations to help your day-to-day work using Microsoft Power Automate and various other things which require coding. Nowadays, it's also got AI. Play with AI and see how can you use it to help with tools. And then very importantly, and we stressed this earlier on in the session, make sure you can make meaningful connections. Have deep conversations with people that you respect and whose viewpoint you respect. Make sure you are constantly collaborating with like-minded individuals and peers, and that you are belonging to a community. And I'm not advocating it must be SASI. It can be any of the voluntary associations that satisfies your particular interest, but those are the connections that you should make. The next thing is, how often do you take responsibility? You know, are you somebody who apportions blame very quickly? Won't the person who's unmuted just mute for me, please? I can't see the mutes. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so if you spend your life blaming other people, it actually delays your own growth. You know, if you point out South Africa's challenges and blame everybody else for the state of the country or the economy, etc., you will constantly be stuck in what we call a victim mindset. Take yourself out of the victim mindset and become somebody who strives to improve, even if you are only improving yourself and a few people immediately around you. Make sure you take 100% responsibility for your own outcomes. I can't tell you what to do and make sure you do it. Only you can do that. Even if it's tough, it gives you the power to create solutions. So here's what we call the responsibility. You can be the victim mode where you say, it's the government's fault I've been unable to find work. Or you can say, well, hang on a minute. I know the economy is tough, but let me improve my skills. What is the skills that industry is looking for? Can I develop those skills to give myself a better opportunity to be more successful? And then you've got a better skill set to sell yourself a little bit better. And always take full responsibility. Doesn't matter about your circumstances. You must create your own opportunities because nobody else is going to create them for you. Those who don't thrive are people who deny that the challenges are there that they could operate in. They simply refuse to be defined by them, and they step over them as a hindrance and a small stepping stone rather than as a barrier that stops them completely. Your choices are you going to invest in yourself, or are you going to adopt and rather invest your time in escapism? We'll explain what we mean by that. Growth is uncomfortable. The space between earning 15,000 and 50,000 Rand per month requires you pushing through certain degrees of discomfort. You're not going to become a high earner without having some pain and some suffering along the way. That's inevitable. It's a given. You can't numb the discount. It doesn't help. It keeps you stuck in the same place that you're in. So as an example, the average South African spends 2,000 Rand a month on things that are what we put into the category of escapism: alcohol, entertainment, social media. Rather than spending some money on that, nobody's saying you mustn't enjoy yourself, but spend 500 Rand on enjoying yourself and spend the other 1,500 Rand on improving yourself. That's what we are trying to say. Let's have a look. You can invest 5,000 Rand because that will help you with skills certification, using it as a startup cost for your business, improving your health, your fitness, which will be a long-term benefit to you, increasing or using apps that do like mindfulness and other things, and so on. Or you can decide you're going to go the 5,000 Rand escape route. Make sure you've got the latest smartphone. Every time Apple bring out another one, yes, they'll trade in your old one, but you're only going to get half your money back and you're going to spend another 10 or 15,000 Rand. Spending the whole weekend partying, so Monday is not really the day you're looking forward to going to work. It's the day you ask who's got a Panado that will assist you with the hangover or the headache that you have. Doing impulse shopping. You know, if you just feel, look, if I buy the latest toy or gadget or appendage, it's going to make me feel better, is a short-lived satisfaction. It's not going to give you any long-term value. And then there are people who subscribe to all sorts of things. You know, not all of them. I mean, a gym is okay because it's going to hopefully keep you fit, but paying gym fees every month and you don't even know where the gym is a waste of your money. The standard that you, I'm just trying to get rid of this admit. The standard that you set and protect. So you must set your own set of standards. Sorry, I need to... Sorry, I just had to jump out and jump back in because they're starting to annoy me with the interruptions. Okay, so you need to set certain standards. The boundary you shape your reality. What you will tolerate will also be what you will teach. So there's nothing wrong with having very strict regimes and what's acceptable and unacceptable. And if you've got to tell somebody, and you'll discover it quickly when you have your own children, yes, you may not be able to smack them and do those things these days, but children respect boundaries. They will respect boundaries the same as people you work with will understand what do you allow and what don't you allow within the workspace. What are your financial standards? You must set a value to yourself. Just don't extend what you think your value is. Remember, most consulting firms will look at your value as being, can you earn 3 times what they pay you in revenue? If you want to earn 100,000 Rand a month, you must be capable of generating 300,000 Rands worth of fees, or your expectation has been set too high. But don't work for nothing. You've got a value. Don't undervalue yourself. Rather wait for the correct job than take any job just to be able to say, well, at least I've got some form of an income. Make sure that you invest your time in the right connections, people that will elevate and challenge you. Again, I said the 5 people around you will be very influential in where you go and how you go, where you are trying to go. So pick your friends wisely. And make sure you set high personal standards. Maintain your health. Ensure that you are unquestionable a person of integrity, and make sure that your growth is regardless of any external pressure that's being applied. We can all make excuses. I hear excuses every day from some of the Masalokani ladies who will tell me, oh, but I'm so busy at work, and oh, I'm so busy doing this. But what are you doing from 2 o'clock in the morning till 6, or from 4 in the morning till 6? Get up 2 hours earlier and whack out the next TER. It's not impossible. Yes, it's going to make you tired, but within a week, the job will be done. Your next 10 years must start today. So start off by making the right daily choices. Ensure that you develop weekly habits that will compound themselves and become just who you are. And if you are interested in, I can strongly recommend this book by James Clear called Atomic Habits. Again, available on Takealot and or exclusive and any other bookshop. Very, very worthwhile read. Another book, easy reading. It's not technical like reading a maths textbook. Very, very good advice and recommendations as to how you can develop habits that make you unstoppable. Make sure that you monitor and measure your monthly growth. Are those habits that I have developed weekly starting to show in my mannerisms and my behavior? And remember that your goal is to ensure that you are transforming each year, even by a small percentage, so that in 10 years' time, you don't look back with regret as to what you've done for the last 10 years. And then finally, you are creating what we like to call a decade of destiny for yourself. The distance between where you are now and where you'll be in 2035 is crossed through intentional daily decisions. My question to you is, what small change will you make today that your future self will thank you for in 10 years' time? And I may well not still be here in 10 years' time, but I certainly hope all of you will be here to be able to say, we remember Uncle Tom telling us this. I'm so glad I did it when he told me, because look at how I am benefiting from it today. Your goal isn't to be successful. Success is measured in short, perhaps, benefits. It is to become valuable. That's what you should be striving for. Yes, you can measure success by you earning a good money, you own a nice car, you've got a nice house, you've developed and grown your own family, you've got assets and wada. But none of that is worth anything if you are not seen as a valuable member of society, firstly, and more importantly, of our profession. Because when you are valuable, success will attract itself to you a lot quicker than you to success. And that's a statement by Justin Wright. As I said and showed you earlier, we've developed numerous short courses in the series, and we've just quickly gone through, as you can see, in less than half an hour, one of them. Make sure you look out for that logo, and at the moment it looks like we're going to have between 50 and 100 different topics, so you can pick and choose stuff on emotional intelligence, stuff on interviews, all kinds of things that are coming down the pipeline. Use them, and hopefully they will be a benefit to you. I saw this the other day on the CISA website, and I thought it was quite apt. Ability is what you're capable of doing. Motivation determines what you do. Attitude determines how well you do it. So you may have the ability, and you may be capable of doing many things, but you need to be both motivated and have the right attitude to ensure that what you do is useful and you do it very, very well. And that's by Low Holtz. Ultimately, your attitude will determine the highest altitude or position and role within our profession that you achieve. You know, many of you in the session that are SASI members may be thinking, one day I want to be the president of SASI. It's a hell of a commitment to your time, as you will have seen by all the things the president is doing, but that's the epitome of a life as a volunteer in an organization like SASET or IMISA or IPET or SAMEKI or SAIE, is to become the president of that organization. It's a service of sacrifice. As I indicated, there are just some of the topics. 4 of those are already uploaded. You may already see something there that is of interest to you. They are all self-explanatory. The effort misconception, for example, is all about how people think the harder they work, the more effort they put in, the greater the benefit will be. And while we will dispel that notion, it's working smart. That's more important. Okay, and as always, if you want to keep a track with SASI, follow SASI on any of those social handles. Going and scrolling and onto SASI TV, you'll be able to look at many of the events that we run, the SOS sessions, site visits, our Knowledge Trailblazer sessions. If you want to just see them without earning points, go and watch them on SASI TV. Otherwise, follow SASI on any of the other handles. And that's the wrap for the evening. Thank you for staying on for the extra half an hour.